Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Life has rules whether you study them or not. Consequences follow choices the way shadows follow movement. The person who never examines the rules does not escape them. They just navigate blind, stumbling through outcomes they could have seen coming if they had taken the time to understand the structure of what they were inside. Game theory strips that blindness away. It is not an academic subject reserved for economists. It is a way of seeing clearly. It is the practice of looking at any situation and asking what is actually happening here, who benefits from what does each available move actually cost, and where does this path lead if followed all the way to its end. That kind of seeing changes decisions, not because the options change, but because the person making the choice finally understands what they are choosing between. A life examined through this lens stops feeling like something happening to you and starts feeling like something you are navigating with your eyes open for the first time. The short game and the long game pull in opposite directions, and every decision you make is a vote for one or the other. Eating the bad food is a vote for the short game. Skipping the work is a vote for the short game. Taking the easy path through the conversation that needed to be hard is a vote for the short game. None of these votes feel significant individually. A single bad meal does not destroy a body. A single skipped session does not kill a skill, but votes accumulate. The direction they point compounds over months and years into a result that is either earned or suffered, depending on which game received the majority of the daily choices. The long game asks more from you up front and delivers later. The short game asks almost nothing up front and collects quietly over time in the currency of unrealized potential and a life that never quite reached what it was capable of becoming. The decision about which game to play is made fresh every day in the small moments that feel too minor to matter. Every person offering you a direction to move is doing so from inside their own story. The advice comes wrapped in their fears, their regrets, their particular experience of what happens when a person tries something and it does not work. This does not make the advice worthless. It makes it partial. A person who tried something bold and got burned will steer you away from bold. A person who played it safe and ended up somewhere small will dress the safety up as wisdom. Neither of them is lying. Both of them are telling you the truth of their own game and calling it universal. The skill worth developing is the ability to receive what someone offers, understand where it comes from, take the parts that serve the direction you are building toward, and set down the parts that belong to a life you never intended to live. No single person's experience is the full map. Use it as one data point among many and keep drawing the map yourself. The board you play on shapes every move you make before you make it. This is the part of personal development that gets the least attention because it is less dramatic than the stories about willpower and discipline and the grinding force of individual character overcoming difficult odds. Those stories are real, but they are incomplete. Behind every person who appears to have extraordinary discipline is an environment that made the disciplined choice easier than the alternative. Behind every person who cannot seem to build the habits they want is an environment that is quietly and consistently working against those habits at every turn. The environment is not neutral. It is always doing something to the person inside it. It is either pulling behavior in a direction that serves growth or pulling it in a direction that serves comfort. It is either making the right move the obvious move or making it the effortful exception to the default. Understanding this shifts the entire conversation about personal change away from trying harder inside a bad environment and toward the more powerful question of how to build an environment where trying less produces better results. Willpower is a limited resource, and the person who relies on it exclusively to maintain the standard they want to hold is playing a losing game from the start. Every decision made through willpower draws from the same finite pool. The morning is full. By the afternoon, the pool is lower. By the evening, the pull of the comfortable choice has become almost irresistible, not because character collapsed, but because the resource ran dry. The person who understands this stops trying to be stronger and starts building smarter. They remove the friction from the right choices before the day begins. The healthy food is in the front of the fridge where the eye lands first. The phone is in a different room from where the work happens. The books are on the desk where the idle hand reaches rather than buried in a drawer behind other things. The gym bag is packed the night before and sitting by the door. None of these require willpower in the moment. They required one deliberate decision made earlier when the pool was full. That single early decision removes the need for dozens of harder ones later. The people around you are the most powerful environmental force acting on your life, and the one that gets examined least honestly. Every person in your immediate circle is either raising or lowering your standard by what they model, what they normalize, and what they make you feel is reasonable to expect from yourself. Spend enough time around people who talk about changing their lives without ever changing them, and the talk starts to feel like progress. Spend enough time around people who build things, and the gap between talking and building becomes impossible to ignore. This is not about judging the people in your current circle. It is about being honest about what the environment they collectively create is doing to your trajectory. The standard you hold yourself to is partly yours and partly borrowed from the people whose behavior surrounds you daily. Change the people you spend the most time with, and the standard shifts without requiring a single act of willpower. The new environment does the work that years of trying harder inside the old one never accomplished. The physical space you work in is either a tool or an obstacle, and treating it as decoration is expensive. A space designed for distraction produces distracted work. A space designed for focus produces focused work. The difference between the two is not a matter of how expensive the furniture is or how aesthetically pleasing the room looks on a screen. It is a matter of what the space makes easy and what it makes difficult. In a space designed for focus, the distracting elements are absent or inaccessible. The thing you are trying to build is visible and present. The tools required for the work are ready to use without preparation. The environment communicates to the brain before the first conscious thought of the day that this is a place where a certain kind of activity happens. The brain responds to environmental cues with extraordinary consistency. The same person in a library and in a living room with a television running is not the same person in terms of their productive capacity. The space shapes the state, and the state shapes the output. Growth environments have a specific quality that is identifiable once you know what to look for. They make your current level of performance feel insufficient, not through criticism, but through proximity to better. When you are surrounded by people operating at a higher level than you currently are, the gap between where you are and where they are becomes visible in a way that no amount of self-examination can replicate. The gap motivates differently than any internal voice because it is concrete and present rather than abstract and future. You can see what is possible because it is standing in front of you doing the thing you have been telling yourself is difficult. The military uses this principle deliberately. Sports teams use it deliberately. The best educational environments use it deliberately. You can use it deliberately by choosing where you spend your time with the same intentionality that you would apply to any other serious investment. The return on placing yourself consistently in environments where better is the standard rather than the exception is compounding, and it begins immediately. Skill is the only asset that cannot be taken from you. Every other form of wealth exists outside you and is therefore subject to forces outside your control. The money in the account can disappear through bad timing or bad luck or bad decisions made by people you never met. The job can be eliminated by technology or economics or the changing priorities of a person sitting in a room you have never entered. The network can scatter when circumstances shift and the mutual benefit that held it together dissolves. But the skill built through years of deliberate practice lives inside you and moves with you into every new situation the game creates. It is the one investment that the market cannot crash, and the one asset that compounds through use rather than depleting. Every hour put into genuine skill development is an hour that permanently changes what you are capable of and therefore permanently changes what is available to you. The return does not arrive immediately. It arrives in every situation for the rest of your life, where the skill becomes the difference between having an option and having none. Options are power in its most practical form, not the abstract power of status or authority, but the concrete power of being able to say no to something that does not serve you because something better is available. The person with no skill has no leverage in any negotiation because walking away from the table leaves them with nothing. The person with rare and developed skill walks into every negotiation from a position of genuine strength, because the skill is valuable independent of any single opportunity offering to use it. This dynamic plays out in every area of life, not just the professional one. The person who has developed the skill of clear communication has options in relationships that the person who cannot articulate what they need does not have. The person who has developed physical capability has options in how they move through the world that the person who neglected their body does not have. Every skill opens a door that did not exist before the skill was built. More doors means more choices. More choices means the ability to walk through the one that actually leads somewhere worth going. The decision quality of a skilled person is structurally different from the decision quality of an unskilled one, and the difference has nothing to do with intelligence. A person with deep skill in a domain can read situations in that domain with a speed and accuracy that the unskilled person cannot match regardless of how hard they think about it. The skilled negotiator reads the room and knows which move to make before the unskilled person has finished processing what is happening. The skilled writer knows which sentence to cut before the unskilled writer has identified that something is wrong. The skilled investor recognizes the pattern in the data before the unskilled investor has decided how to feel about the numbers. This is not magic. It is the product of accumulated repetition, building pattern recognition that operates faster than conscious thought. The investment in skill is therefore also an investment in the quality of perception. A skilled eye sees more in the same situation than an unskilled one. More seen means more options identified. More options identified means better decisions available. Better decisions made consistently produce a life that looks from the outside like exceptional judgment, but is from the inside the simple result of knowing the game well enough to read it clearly. Skill compounds in a way that almost nothing else does. The first year of developing a skill produces modest returns because the foundation is still being laid, and the patterns are still being established, and the failures are still frequent enough to dominate the experience of the practice. The second year builds on the first, and the returns increase not linearly, but geometrically, because the foundation is now stable enough to support a more sophisticated structure. By the third year, the person practicing the skill is operating at a level that the first-year version of themselves could not have imagined reaching, and the fourth year builds on the third in the same accelerating way. This is the compounding that financial investors speak about applied to human capacity rather than capital. And like financial compounding, it requires patience through the early years when the returns feel thin and the temptation to abandon the investment in favor of something with a faster visible return is strongest. The people who stay through the thin early years collect the returns in the later ones. The people who switch before the compounding kicks in start the clock over every time and never collect what patience would have produced. The breadth of skill matters as much as the depth of any single one. A person with one deep skill is valuable in the specific situations that skill addresses and vulnerable in every other situation the game creates. A person with several developed skills that connect to each other has a different kind of leverage because the skills combine into a capability that none of them produces independently. The writer who also understands psychology produces work that the pure technician of language cannot produce. The entrepreneur who also understands design thinks about products differently than the one who relies entirely on other people's aesthetic judgment. The athlete who also understands nutrition recovers differently than the one who trains hard and eats carelessly. The combinations are the competitive advantage because the combinations are rare. Deep skills are built by many people with sufficient dedication. Rare combinations of skills are built by the person who is curious enough to develop across domains and patient enough to let the connections form over time through the natural overlap of applied knowledge. The investment in skill requires protecting the time for it against the constant pressure of things that feel urgent but are not important. Urgency is the enemy of skill development because skill development is almost never urgent. Nobody is standing at your door demanding that you practice the craft for another hour today. The deadline that is real and present and loud will always win against the investment that is real but quiet and whose return is deferred. This is why skill development requires the same deliberate protection that any serious investment requires. The time for it gets decided in advance and defended against the competing claims of the urgent. The person who practices only when everything else is handled never practices because everything else is never handled. The practice slot exists before the day's demands are known because if it waits for a gap in the demands, the gap never arrives. Protect the investment with the same seriousness you would protect any other asset whose value compounds over time. Because that is exactly what it is. Signal and noise exist in every environment you move through, and the brain treats both with the same initial attention because it cannot tell them apart before it processes them. This is the expensive part. The filtering happens after the intake, not before it, which means everything gets processed to the degree necessary to determine whether it was worth processing. Every piece of irrelevant information you absorb costs you something before you discover it was irrelevant. The scroll through content that has nothing to do with what you are building costs attention. The conversation about events you cannot influence costs energy. The opinion absorbed from a source that has no genuine understanding of your situation costs clarity. None of these costs feel significant individually because individually they are not. The damage is in the accumulation. A day filled with small, irrelevant inputs is a day where the attention was spent before the important work ever received it. The person running on fragmented, depleted attention is not the same person they would have been if the attention had been protected from the beginning. They are slower, less decisive, less creative, and less capable of the quality of thinking that the important work requires. Clarity is not a personality trait distributed unevenly at birth. It is a condition produced by a specific kind of mental environment. The mind that is not carrying a load of irrelevant information is a mind that can see the situation in front of it plainly and respond to it with precision. The mind buried under the accumulated weight of noise, the news cycle and the social drama and the opinions and the updates and the content and the commentary on the content. That mind is doing most of its work, just managing the load before it ever gets to the thing that actually matters. The person who protects their mental environment with the same seriousness that a surgeon protects the physical environment of an operating room is not being precious or antisocial. They are being strategic. They understand that the quality of their thinking is directly related to the quality of what they allow into the space where the thinking happens. Clean the space and the thinking improves without any other intervention. The improvement is not subtle. It is immediate and it is significant. The news is the loudest source of noise available, and the one that arrives with the most convincing justification for consuming it. Staying informed sounds like a responsibility. It sounds like what a serious person who cares about the world does. But there is a difference between being genuinely informed about things you can actually influence and being continuously updated about everything that is happening everywhere to everyone at all times. The first is a reasonable investment of a small amount of attention applied to specific relevant information. The second is an attention drain that produces anxiety without producing any corresponding capacity to change the things generating the anxiety. The test is simple. After consuming the information, is there a specific action available to you that you would not have known to take without it? If yes, the information was signal. If no, it was noise dressed in the clothes of relevance. Apply that test consistently, and the news consumption that was previously automatic becomes a deliberate choice made far less frequently. Social media is engineered to feel like signal while delivering primarily noise. The engineering is sophisticated, and the intent behind it is clear, which is to maximize the time you spend on the platform regardless of whether that time serves any purpose you chose. The feed is designed to feel like it might contain something important at any moment, so that the scrolling continues past the point where anything useful was encountered. The emotional reactions are designed to feel significant, because significance keeps you engaged. The comparison content is designed to activate the gap between where you are and where others appear to be, because that gap generates the kind of uncomfortable engagement that keeps you returning. None of this is accidental, and none of it is serving your strategy. The question to ask about any platform consuming a significant portion of your attention is what it has actually produced for your life in the last 30 days.